This episode has been brought to you in part by Canderel and Kingset Capital. Coming soon, affordable luxury condominium living at 908 St. Clair West. Nestled into a vibrant, one-of-a-kind neighborhood, 908 St. Clair West is a modern treasure, offering a sophisticated lifestyle inspired by St. Clair Village and prestigious Forest Hill. Register today at 908stclairwest.com.
Freedom of expression, assembly, and association are cornerstones of democracy, but Nazi symbolism, racist imagery, and desecration of war memorials are not. It is an insult to memory and truth.
That was, of course, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Monday reacting to the ongoing freedom convoy of truckers and the protests that hit Ottawa over the weekend. And watching it all unfold from her home in Ottawa was Marci Surkes. But this time, for the first time in years, she was watching it as a private citizen. Last week was Surkes' last day as Justin Trudeau's chief policy advisor in the Prime Minister's office. Surkes stepped down from the job for personal reasons, mostly the crazy, stressful hours of running Canada under the pandemic and working all the time except Shabbat. She's been in charge of the government's positions on all the major files, but she's also been the gatekeeper for Jewish leaders who want to get the Prime Minister's ear. And she's taught him a thing or two.
I've taught him how to pronounce Hebrew words properly with the appropriate at the end, so to speak. So if you ever watch any of his videos and you think, wow, he really knew how to say Chag Sameach, I will take credit for a little bit of that.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Tuesday, February the 1st, 2022. Welcome to the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Marci Surkes has been called the air traffic controller in the Prime Minister's office. For the last 2 years, it was her job to make sure all the cabinet ministers were carrying out their mandates and to figure out which new laws should be introduced into Parliament. And she was even one of the 9 people who Russia banned from traveling there in retaliation for Canada putting sanctions on Moscow after poisoning an opposition leader and jailing him. Surkes grew up in Montreal. She went to Brandeis for journalism and politics. Then she got a law degree at McGill and came to Ottawa with Trudeau 15 years ago, in 2007, when he was still in opposition. But the last 2 years, she's been one of the most influential and powerful people on Parliament Hill, and her fingerprints have been all over Trudeau's relationship with the Jewish community, especially lately, with a spike in antisemitism. Coming up, Marci Surkes will be here to pull back the curtain on her job in the PMO, where she had to carry 3 cell phones with her. But first, here's what's making news elsewhere in Canada.
I'm Dr. Alexis Lerner in Annapolis, Maryland, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like.
The Ontario New Democratic Party has dropped the former mayor of Ajax, Steve Parish, as their candidate for the upcoming provincial election in Ajax after the controversy over his support for naming a local street after a wartime Nazi Navy captain. We reported on it just last week, and we had our interview with Emma Cunningham. She quit as an NDP riding president because of it. Parish apologized for hurting Jewish people's feelings, but not for keeping the street name the way it was. Marci Surkes joins me now from her home in Ottawa, which she shares with her partner, Rabbi Dara Lithwick, who also works as a lawyer on Parliament Hill, and the couple's 2 children. You and I are both poli-sci majors, so a little primer. The PMO's office is really important in Canada. How many staff under you doing what while you were there?
So my role in the Prime Minister's office, if you imagine it being the nerve center, I was sort of at this intersection where all of the information about everything that's happening from a public policy perspective flowed through my shop, my team. There was myself, and I worked with a team of roughly 10 policy advisors and some administrative staff who were focused on ensuring that we know what was happening and helping to shape the direction and coordinate all of the public policy work across all of the ministers' offices which are at the top of all of the departments of government.
It was 10 out of how many?
It's probably, it fluctuates. It's about 100 people, give or take. Since I've been there over the last 2 years, I've probably worked with about half a dozen fellow Jewish colleagues. So it's not it's not a minion, but it's not nothing. But I would say, I mean, in terms of being Jewish within the Prime Minister's office, I certainly have not had an exclusive mandate to work on issues of concern to the Jewish community, but there is no issue of concern to the Jewish community that I was not brought into to be part of that conversation, to weigh in, to either run with if appropriate, or at least to gauge my opinion on, certainly.
What did you do to get the emergency summit on anti-Semitism set up? How much was that? Was you?
Yeah, it was the community leadership from a number of different organizations began to approach me, approached other representatives of the government, different ministers, looking for a forum of that sort, because it was desperately needed. And I was positioned to be able to advise in favor of it taking place, and to help to ensure the Prime Minister was there, to ensure that the right ministers were there in that virtual room, and that the voices were heard, and that on the back end of that summit, that there would be follow through, and that work continues to this day. And there's considerable follow through on that, including the pledges at the Malmo conference this past fall. And you may have noticed just last week, the government has committed to writing a handbook to accompany to lend color and credence to the IRA definition. And I think that is a really important step forward for all of us.
Can you tell us how this happened? I remember this so well. Friday afternoon, CJN announced there's going to be a summit. Then Erwin Kotler announced it on Twitter. Then Bardish Chagger announced it. And we're like, what? It's 4:00 on Friday. How did that happen?
I think the reality is that government is often dancing at multiple parties at the same time. And as I said earlier, sequencing is everything. And maybe in that instance, the timing wasn't exactly the right timing in terms of reaching the audience that the government was attempting to reach. But there's sort of no malice behind that. It's just when things come together and when the information is ripe and ready. And I think if I'm not mistaken in that instance, I think the government announcement was intended to come earlier, but wires got crossed or what have you. But again, I mean, certainly not for any ill reason. And the bottom line is the information got out and the summit took place, and I think was, like I said, a pretty crucial moment in terms of engagement and relationship building and continued work in partnership and allyship between the communities and the government.
Why was the government, and whether this was your decision or not, did they not invite to be part of it, but just to listen, Erin O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh and the other major leaders? I think ultimately it was appropriate to have the opposition leaders there. My fervent view is that on issues of concern to the community, whether it is domestic issues or on Israel, that it is in everybody's best interest that it actually not be a partisan issue. I really think that the community benefits when representatives from all parties acknowledge and work together on these critical matters. So that's my personal view on those things. I hate to see Jewish issues be used as a political football. I think it is. I just don't think that serves any of us. Speaking about that, you were mentioning that Jewish groups were lobbying you. My producer sent me a link to the lobbying page of the federal government's lobbying commission that watches these things. And most number of times that had your name lobbied was from the CJS this past year. I don't know if you're aware of that they put that in, right? You don't.
Yes. No, they put that in. No, I hadn't done the tally, but that's interesting.
Right. Way more than anybody group. There was one other Jewish person down there, was Eli Alboim on behalf of the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver. So are you the point person for Jewish lobbying in the PMO, or, because of your position? That seems like a lot.
I would say twofold. In terms of any issues that are registered as lobbying activities, the fact that I'm of the community and understand the issues that they are bringing forward as issues that are germane is clearly one of the reasons why I would say that I certainly meet with groups from all across the spectrum and on myriad issues. But certainly I have worked with CJ very closely, and I worked with them exceptionally closely when I was at public safety on renewing security infrastructure program and broadening that out. And that is, I think, a vital program of the federal government.
Let's talk about two things that the Prime Minister well. Two things about him that you think would surprise our listeners.
Well, I'll give you one bit just in relation to Jewish community understanding, and then I'll give myself a minute to think about a second one. In terms of Jewish community, I don't know if everyone knows this or has heard him speak about it. He doesn't speak about it often, though he does. When he does, it's really quite moving. But he did travel. I guess it's probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, to Auschwitz, he continues to maintain a close friendship with Rabbi Shire from the Shar in Montreal, who I hope it's okay that I'm mentioning that, who was on that delegation along with survivors. And I think to this day, the Prime Minister thinks of Rabbi Shire as his rabbi and trusted confidant, and somebody who he turns to for wisdom and teaching and understanding. And I have really drawn great strength from that connection and that relationship. And I think it has been probably mutually beneficial, but I know that it's guided the PM, and he has turned it into a really deep understanding.
Does he study Talmud with him and Torah, or he just talks about faith in general?
Yeah, just general, more general. I wouldn't say that it's a studying type of relationship, but it's a friendship and an exchange of ideas, and I think that it has really grounded the PM in the Jewish Canadian experience, but in Jewish thought leadership, and the PM I know has really taken much from that relationship, as he has as well with his close and enduring friendship with Erwin Kotler, and so I think that he. And I like to think I've taught him a thing or two as well along the way. But he's had great leaders, and he has great insight into the community. And when he speaks about the events at Colleyville or when the Shar Shemayim was when there was a near attack last year, which was stopped, thankfully, thanks to the security cameras that the congregation put in place in partnership with the Government of Canada. He speaks to it from a place of great understanding.
So how did it work when Jenica Atwin became a liberal after tweeting that Israel was apartheid? How did you navigate that?
It's not directly in my purview in terms of a responsibility. I'm not working for the Liberal Party, so obviously the party does recruitment of candidates. I will say only this: I certainly understand the concerns that have been raised about her continued presence in caucus. She is working, has developed relationships with the Jewish members of our caucus, and is I think coming to a place of a better understanding of why the words that she used were not the right words. I think she has sort of said as much, and she continues to work with the caucus, but that's kind of a caucus matter. It's a little bit outside of my swim lane, if I'm being honest. So
there's got to be a book in this, a tell-all book.
No, I think I have certainly enough material for several volumes. There's no question about that. I don't know about tell all, but I am definitely interested in at some point having the opportunity to write about what I've experienced, because I actually think it's been a historic period for Canada, and I've been right at the center of it. So certainly lots to share at some point soon, but I will take a bit of a rest first before I get to typing anything.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Integrity, community, quality, and customer care. Today's listener shout-out goes to Dr. Eli Rabin. He's wintering in Phoenix, and he wrote in to tell us that there was one high-ranking Jewish Canadian public servant who we neglected to mention in the episode that we did about the new Jewish Public Servants Network that's formed up in Ottawa. And he's right, and I actually knew him. He's Charles Gavsey. He was head of the St. Lawrence Seaway Commission in 1957. Thanks for writing in. And we'll end the episode with a special promotion. For the month of February, listeners to the podcast can use the promo code CJN Daily to buy a subscription to our CJN Circle, and you'll get a third off. You'll save $36 off the regular price of $100, so you pay $64. The Circle is basically a membership, and it supports the podcast. Plus, you get exclusive invitations to events, you'll get a guaranteed spot on the new magazine mailing list, and you'll get special insider email newsletters. So go to the cjn.ca/circle and use the coupon code CJN Daily, all one word, when you pay. The link to find out more is in our show notes, and once again, thank you for your support.